It's International Moon Day, marking 57 years since Apollo 11 when Neil Armstrong took humanity's first steps on the lunar surface. But unlike the Cold War space race between the U.S. and Soviet Union, a new lunar race is now taking shape. And this time, China is the new challenger. But today's competition is much more than planting a flag. Nations are competing to build the first long-term human presence beyond Earth. Well, the prize is the moon's south pole. Scientists believe its permanently shadowed craters hold water ice, a resource that could provide drinking water, oxygen, and even rocket fuel. That means future spacecraft could one day refuel on the moon instead of carrying everything from Earth, making deeper space missions cheaper and more practical. Well, the U.S. is pursuing that vision through NASA's Artemis program, supported by more than 60 countries under the Artemis Accords. Earlier this year, Artemis 2 carried astronauts around the moon for the first time in more than half a century. And NASA is targeting a crewed landing by 2028, following another test mission in 2027, although the Artemis program has faced several delays and schedule changes. Now, China is moving just as quickly. Its Chang'e program has already landed on the moon's far side and returned samples from a region never explored before. Now, later this year, Chang'e 7 will head to the lunar south pole in search of water ice as Beijing works towards landing astronauts before 2030 and building its own lunar research station. Now, for more on the race to the moon, let's speak now with Professor Quentin Parker. He's the director of the Laboratory for Space Research at the University of Hong Kong. So, Professor, China has gone from being a relative newcomer in space exploration to landing on the moon's far side and returning samples. Just how significant is this progress, and how seriously should the rest of the world take China's lunar ambitions?
This is an extremely interesting period. I mean, it's fantastic that it's Moon Day today and we're having this conversation. Depending who you talk to, there is a race. I mean, clearly there is a race, but the Chinese really like to frame their lunar program as a step-by-step exploration at their own pace. And so they don't like the Cold War rhetoric associated with the past Russian and American ventures. But it is at a very exciting time. You've had Artemis going gangbusters, although the Artemis 3 now is not going to go directly to the moon. It's going to do some docking maneuvers and testing in low Earth orbit. And the Chinese, of course, have got Chang'e 7 coming up, due to launch from Wenchang in Hainan Island at about the 24th to 26th of August, in that window, and then actually landing their rover on the lunar south pole, which is where everybody is looking at, because that's where they think the resources are, the water ice and the helium-3 that never sees the light of day in deep lunar craters on the lunar south pole where the sun never gets to shine. And so getting access to those resources is the key. And that's the race part of it. Who's going to get access to those resources first? And who's going to be able to find the prime real estate, which is what I think the Chang'e mission is going to do. It's going to spend quite a lot of time in lunar orbit looking to find and map those resources before it decides where best to land. So that's a really exciting part of what's happening now. The two competing groups, if you like, there are about 70 countries actually associated with the Artemis program. There's about 17 or so with the Chinese at the moment. But countries are starting to hedge a little bit and starting to think, well, do we really want to put all our eggs in one basket? So you have countries like Thailand that's involved in both, and UAE as well, through their government systems and through the university systems.
Okay, so if you compare the U.S. and China today, where does each side hold the advantage? Is this mainly contest of technology? Is it funding or political commitment?
Yes, and yes. I mean, if you look at what China's just done very recently, last Friday, they did a successful capture of the Long March 10B rocket using a completely different technology to what Elon Musk has been doing with his rockets, Falcon X, etc., using tweezers to catch a reusable rocket. So reusable rockets to get stuff up to low Earth orbit first, and because with Starship you're going to have to refuel a lot of times in order to get to the moon. And that is actually a problem. And so there's quite a few active developments happening in reusable rocket technology, which is going to have a major impact on the lunar programs as well, actually. And so, so it's technological developments. And of course, the Artemis program is a private company, SpaceX, so it doesn't have the same constraints that NASA used to have, which is why they can afford to do rapid testing and things blowing up without worrying too much because they've got deep pockets that can keep going. And so that's also a change since the last space race, as it were, in the 60s, is that now you've got non-state actors playing a very fundamental role in getting to the moon, commercial actors, in fact. And in fact, in China as well, although it's a lot very strongly state supported, there's a lot of emerging non-state actors too, like Landspace and other companies that are getting in on the game. So the whole situation is quite different to what it was in the late 60s with trying to get man on the moon. We're now going beyond that. We're now thinking about lunar bases, human habitation on the moon long term. So that's a fundamental change as well. Of course, the technology's evolved enormously in that time as well.
Yeah, so both Washington and Beijing have set ambitious timelines for returning astronauts to the moon and establishing a long-term presence there. Just how realistic are those timelines? Should we expect more delays?
Space exploration development is inherently risky, and some of the technology is not exactly tried and tested yet. So you have to put caveats on some of this just due to the realities of when things go wrong. But at the moment, I would say that both programs are on track. There have been some churn at NASA's leadership and there have been some delays with the American program. China seems to be progressing smoothly at this stage with all its testing and development of its lunar modules and things of that nature. They've got a very well-developed plan. So I'm not sure now who's going to be first. There's a lot of debate out there about will the Americans get there first or will the Chinese overtake them? And I think it's got less clear in the recent past than it was when most people were betting on America being first. Now I think there's a bit more equivocation on who's going to get to the moon first. So I think it's just kind of wait and see at the moment.
And Professor, the Outer Space Treaty now says no country can claim sovereignty over the moon. But if several countries want to operate in the same strategically valuable areas, especially around the South Pole, just how might those competing interests be managed?
Possession is 9/10 of the law, as they say. And once you're there, who's actually going to stop you? I mean, you've got to look at the reality of the capacities that nations have to do stuff in space and to put stuff and infrastructure on the moon. And you can have a treaty, but treaties are only as good as the compliance that is able to be applied to them. And if you have powerful nations doing their own thing, and don't forget there's other emerging space powers like India as well as they're starting to grow significantly, is that, if you're there first, that is such a big thing to actually be there first. And to, you're claiming something, whether the treaties like it or not, you're actually there. And then what can they do practically?
Indeed. And Professor, for most people, all of this can seem very distant. A lot is already happening here on Earth. So why should viewers care about this new moon race? What sort of practical benefits or consequences could they see over the next 5 to 10 years?
That's an extremely good question. There's a lot of people that think, well, we've got so many problems on the Earth, so many issues with climate change and geopolitical tensions, and pollution and poverty and inequalities everywhere. Why are we spending vast sums of money to go to the moon? And that's always been a question right from Apollo days and before, the same question, actually, in different forms. But it's a question of, what we are as a species and what we plan to do in the future, in the far future, 100 years from now, 200 years from now. Are we still going to be stuck on this polluted planet? Are we going to be able to explore other parts of our solar system and go beyond that? Does that mean we have a future beyond Earth? These are big questions, and have been trying the minds of brilliant people for long periods of time. I personally think that there's a lot of science that comes with this. A lot of the development, a lot of our modern technologies come about through things like astrophysics and space science and lunar missions, like Velcro and Wi-Fi. And all these things have come as a result of the technological push for exploration and for science. So that's the kind of associated benefits we get from a lot of this stuff. And so who knows what other benefits we'll get from these new developments to get to the moon, have bases there, and what it means for our species going forward. It is a good question, and it's no easy answers to some people on this.